Test.
Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 9 a.m. and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance by Board Member Knight.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Rorick, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Chairman Jack Sellers.
Here.
Vice Chair Mike Hammond. Here. Member Stratton.
Here.
Member Thompson. Member Elters.
Here.
Member Knight.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum. We do have a vacant member still after Mr. Cuthbertson's leaving the board. And Mr. Thompson is attempting to call in. We're working to get that set up. If it's possible, we'll make a connection. Other than that, you have a quorum and all members present.
Thank you. Okay, just a few opening remarks. I want to thank Mayor Jen Miles and City Manager Don Foggin for really an outstanding tour yesterday. It was very informative. We also had a very nice reception at the Kingman Visitor Center, which is also the Route 66 Museum. It was really nice to have a quiet environment where we could discuss local issues. And I was very impressed on the tour because of the vision and the leadership of this area, really having a plan in place for how to capitalize on the advantages of this being a multimodal hub. So, any other board members like to make a remark?
Yeah, I was here last year and went on the tour, and I almost didn't attend this tour. And I have to admit, I'm really glad I did. It gave us a great overview of some of the projects that are important to you. And I liked the intimacy of the dinner, and the food was great. And as always, Kingman puts on a good show for us, and we're really glad to be here again.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you. Mr. Rorick, would you please announce the Title VI Civil Rights Act?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Americans with Disability Act, the Arizona State Transportation Board and the Arizona Department of Transportation do not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, or disability. No person will be excluded from participation and be denied the benefit of or be otherwise subjected to discrimination under any state transportation board or ADOT program or activity. And we ask the public to help us to assist their participation by completing a self-identification survey located in the table at the entrance to the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, moving to call to the audience. This is an opportunity for members of the public to discuss items of interest with the board. If you haven't already, please fill out a request for public input form and give it to Mr. Rorick if you wish to address the board. In the interest of time, we will impose a 3-minute time limit. So we will start with Gene Bishop, County Supervisor.
Yeah, they don't blend into the others.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm pleased to be here speaking to you this morning. I'm Mojave County Supervisor Gene Bishop, and I wanted to take a moment to just thank you for choosing Kingman to be your first meeting of 2019. I'd like to encourage you to keep Kingman on the top of your list when you make your project funding recommendations for this year. You know, the I-11 Rancho Santa Fe Traffic Interchange project deserves your support and funding on the ADOT's 5-year plan for several reasons. As a county supervisor, I'm always supportive of promoting economic development in our county, and this project will provide access to over 4,000 acres of raw land and has the potential to become the greatest jobs-producing catalyst for the county in the next decade. The sales tax revenue for the county and the state from this construction enabled by this project will be measured in tens of millions, not to mention the state income tax and all these new jobs. An additional benefit will be to improve the safety of travel on old Route 66, which will see less truck traffic due to the improved access to the airport industrial park. This reduced heavy traffic will also have a beneficial impact on ADOT's road maintenance costs for the old Route 66 and Andy Devine traffic interchange. With all of these benefits, we hope that you will find a way to include the Rancho Santa Fe traffic interchange in your funding program. And then, since I have a little time left, I also wanted to give a plug in for the Highway 93 Pierce Ferry interchange intersection, and plead that the board will consider maybe placing that on the 5-year plan for a flyover interchange that our director, Steve Lakowski of Public Works, has recommended that might alleviate some of the numerous traffic accidents on that intersection. I appreciate your time, and please enjoy the rest of your visit with Kingman. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, David Lane, the Vice Mayor of Lake Havasu City. And on deck will be Key Allen Begay Jr.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is David Lane. I am the Vice Mayor of Lake Havasu City and a board member of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. It was a pleasure to meet with you during the Rural Transportation Summit in October in Lake Havasu City, and it's great to see you here again in Mojave County. It's always nice when our state boards make the trip to our part of the state, and we hope you enjoy your time here. I'd like to start off by telling you how much we appreciate our local Arizona Department of Transportation members and the job they're doing on behalf of our citizens. Most notable, and the project that's garnered the most positive attention, is the rock beautification on State Route 95 between Palo Verde North and Industrial Boulevard in Lake Havasu City. The weeds that were removed and the gravel placed adjacent to the roadway has lessened the amount of debris and litter which accumulates in that area. It shows what can be accomplished when state and local agencies work together to complete a project. As you may recall, I spoke to you 3 months ago when you were in Lake Havasu City. At that time, I discussed a 2-phase safety project on State Route 95 in the vicinity of Kiowa Boulevard. The initial project called for safety improvements at the intersection, which included new signals, widening the roadway, a new median and turning lane. The project was scheduled to start in September and be concluded by now. That project has yet to begin. From what we've been told, there was a problem in the bid process in which someone from ADOT failed to put in the language that refers to disadvantaged business enterprise, or DBE, when putting the project out for bid. I believe that language is required by statute in any bid package of this type of project, so someone dropped the ball, and we've yet to see any movement on this project. The second phase of the project is an additional signal light north of the location, which will allow vehicle traffic to safely turn into and out of the commercial shopping center located on the northwest side of the roadway. The Lake Havasu MPO has identified funding we can use for this part of the project. However, this is on a state route and should be paid for with state funds, not the funds we use for city projects. You've heard me say this before. If it's predictable, it's preventable. When you all are driving around the state, you guys are professionals, you notice whenever there's something that doesn't look right. I have 30 years of experience in traffic safety, and I predict a serious or fatal traffic collision occurring here. Since I last spoke with you 3 months ago, there have been 5 collisions here. A motorcyclist was hit, there's been 2 other injury collisions, and there's also been a hit and run. In addition, another commercial building has been constructed in that area, and this is just adding to the traffic. So let's work together on the project, use some of the funds we've identified through the MBO. If you can identify half of the funds, that would be great. Let's share it. We'll do it, work together, and we can prevent somebody from losing their life. Thank you again for coming here, and we look forward to working as teammates in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Mr. Chair, if I could just quick update. It looks as if we're having phone difficulties with connecting Mr. Thompson, and I don't believe he'll be able to join the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is Key Allen Begay Jr., Navajo Nation Council, and on deck is Travis Lengenfelder, Vice Mayor of Kingman.
Good morning, committee members, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to provide additional and update information. My name is Cale McGay Jr. with the Navajo Nation, a tribal member, council member. I've been going before the board numerous times. This is my second time coming over to Kingman. Last month, I was over at Morenci as well. I've been all over following and expressing the issue and concern about the right-of-way between Mini Farms and Chinle, Arizona on Highway 191. As of yesterday, the local community chapter officials, they had a meeting with the district manager and other staff from the Arizona Department of Transportation, and it seems that no progress, nothing has been done, and the last that we're told by the community was that none of these progress is probably at the back burner, that nothing may not even happen in the near future, and I don't know what that means, but I know the board, the administration had gone to the community numerous times, and the Navajo Nation had submitted several position statements, and I've made visit to the Arizona Department of Transportation Administration. I provided as much information as we could to the administration, but as of yesterday, I don't know how else I can express my disappointment and how I can further request if the administration and even a board member could come back to the Navajo Nation to resolve this particular issue. And with the inclement weather as such, majority, about 90% of the reservation is unpaved. And so you can just imagine how the access to each of these right-of-way is nothing but dirt and muddy area. So I request for the board members to seriously consider and directly verbally ask if this particular issue is addressed again, and if we could have a follow-up with the administration and with the district manager. As of yesterday, as I indicated, that they're new. I don't know how soon, how much time they had been in the position as a district manager. So it is troubling for us as we're on the northeastern part of the state of Arizona. So I appreciate the time and hope that I could get a response, and hopefully that the Navajo Nation would work appropriately with the administration, Arizona Department of Transportation. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Vice Mayor, I think I messed up your last name.
You're not the first one. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff. Thank you for being here in Kingman this morning as you start out your year. Hope you enjoyed the tour yesterday. I'm here obviously in support of a partnership between ADOT and the City of Kingman for the I-11 East Kingman Connection Project. Kingman is a regional hub in the making, and as you probably certainly saw on the tour yesterday, we have a lot of opportunity here. A partnership with ADOT on this project is going to lead to increased mobility, increased safety on the Route 66 and Andy Devine. Currently, we have over 5,000 trips out of our industrial park a day. Half of those are commercial traffic. So we're looking to increase safety, increase mobility, and the economic and fiscal impacts both for Kingman, for the region, and for the state of Arizona in northwest Arizona are substantial over a 30-year period. So hopefully you'll keep us in mind as you prioritize funding. Thank you again, and hope you have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Brady Harris, Vice Mayor of Tucson. And on deck, we have Leanne Roy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm here on behalf of the town of Tucson as the Vice Mayor, and it's just to show a appreciation for the staff and for the council and for particularly Director Helikowski and his staff and their response to our inquiries. And we just appreciate the response. Them coming out and reaching out to us in the multiple meetings, and we look forward to working with them in the future so that we can develop this highway to the Grand Canyon. And the response has been tremendous, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Leanne Roy, and on deck is Katney Rosengrant.
Good morning. Thank you, Board and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Leanne Roy, GIS Supervisor from the Planning Department of Navajo Division of Transportation, Navajo DOT. Navajo DOT understands that Arizona Department of Transportation is the governing agency over all transportation infrastructures in Arizona. Navajo DOT would like to encourage and emphasize the continuation and partnership and collaboration with the Navajo Nation and Navajo DOT with the Arizona Tribal Transportation Program, the 5311 Rural Public Transportation Program, and the traffic safety sections. Again, Navajo DOT would like to continue collaboration with ADOT regarding all issues pertaining to the state highway system and those that impact tribal and BIA roads. This will also include the multimodal planning division that's responsible for data and analysis, studies and programs, transportation programs, transit programs, grants, airport developments, and statewide research. So with Navajo DOT's Navajo Nation Long Range Transportation Plan, LRTP, Navajo DOT would like to reemphasize that our LRTP is multi-year planning process to research, draft, and develop a path forward for multimodal transportation investments into the Navajo Nation. The LRTP helps us to identify short and long-range transportation plans, improvements, strategies, and address the current and future transportation needs, including according to tribal, federal, and state government policies. We would also like to include our support with Mr. Key Allen Begay's follow-up for State Route 191 on the current status of their concerns between Mini Farms and Chinle. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, Katney Rosengrant, citizen of Flagstaff. Pardon me, of Kingman. I'll get it right here in a minute.
Okay, that's good.
Many notes in front of me.
Well, good morning, Chairman and board members. I'm here speaking on behalf of the 93 I-40 Tier 1 interchange. Excuse me. I live on a property that's directly affected by that. I know that you have it on your plan. I just want to see that it stays a priority as far as funding goes. On Sunday afternoons, you can see traffic backed up all the way to 68 and the off of Coyote Pass to the inspection station. It's very frustrating. You have traffic cutting over on roads that are less than built to handle that kind of traffic. So again, I'd like to see you keep it as a priority when it comes to funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kara Harris.
I'm back. Hi, guys. I want you to know, first of all, nobody pays for my gas. Nobody pays for my transportation. I don't work for an engineering firm. I don't work for a road company. I'm just an old lady who rides a bike. Next month, you will be at our end of the world. You're planning on coming to Douglas for your meeting. And first of all, I dressed up to invite you as an ambassador to please get off at the Sonoyta exit, drive down to 82, and then connect to 90. I would like you to see from just my end of the world what we have to deal with. We have to deal with increased traffic since NAFTA of 18-wheel vehicles that are coming from Nogales and coming over to Highway 90. In fact, on Wednesday night when I came home, it was around 8:30 at night. I'm not usually out at night. I noticed 18-wheelers. There was 4 of them on Highway 82. My DPS officers, who I have a relationship with, not because they stop me, but I take them pie, have told me that the damage to the road is done by the increased 18-wheel traffic, not to mention all the guardrails that have been taken out and all the people that have been killed on that road. We had a motorcyclist who lost his leg. when a man hit him and ran. We've had a motorcyclist killed out there because it's I guess you'd say, the scenic route to get to Sierra Vista. So whether you're going to go to Douglas that way or you come back that way, please take at least one way and take 90 to 82 to Sonoyta or vice versa, and see what the traffic is on that road and how it has increased exponentially since the NAFTA and whatever it's called now has changed industry from Mexico. And I will see you in Douglas because that's an hour drive for me. This is a 3-hour drive. It's a 600-mile plus round trip for me and my car, and I'm thankful. My friends live off that road, Round Valley Road, as you get on I-40, and the lady was talking about that, and they're right, it's kind of crazy. You come up there and people are on your tail. And I've appreciated the widening of 93 because I've been traveling that road to visit them for over 10 years. And so I'm appreciative of everywhere it's 4 lanes and hope you continue this I-11 corridor. I just hope you get a paver that paves it better, because if you came up 93, I noticed an awful lot of patches that are no good. Thank you, and see you next month in Douglas.
Thank you. Next, we have Barbara Pape. Not sure I pronounced that right.
Perfect.
Okay.
Good morning, members, board members. I'm here to ask you not to approve the roundabout at Aztec Road and Highway 95. I'm one of those persons who has given you over 300 petition signatures from our community against this plan. A community questionnaire with ADOT's choices, Plan A and B, also given this board evidence to an ADOT study finding stating that Aztec Road and Highway 95 intersection has a sight direction problem. I am here asking this board not to implement this roundabout. Highway 95 is a thoroughfare and not a connector street connecting with another street, which I've seen roundabouts in California. As you know, our Mojave County is a tourist county with RVs, boats, trailers, towed agricultural, mining vehicles, and 18-wheelers in this regional area. A roundabout design is to slow down and keep a flow of traffic to a limit of 35 miles an hour. You can't get this engineered design to work with our people who don't even stop for red lights. So how about please give our community Plan B, the fully upgraded intersection signal with medians that will be suitable for our community wants and needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Charlie Odegaard, Flagstaff Council Member.
Good morning and Happy New Year. And I bring greetings from the City of Flagstaff Mayor and my fellow colleagues on the City Council. I just want to bring you some good news that's happening in the City of Flagstaff. We just hired a new executive director in the name of Jeff Meilbeck. You might have heard that name. He was our NAPTA director there at the City of Flagstaff for nearly 20 years. With the hiring of Jeff Meilbeck as our new executive director on the FMPO, I look for that FMPO to be a robust organization. I was just chosen by my colleagues to serve on that FMPO board, and so I'm looking forward to that. New opportunities and the new year. I just also wanted to tell you that we just approved in our second reading this past Tuesday an IGA with ADOT concerning McConnell Drive and the bridge leading into Flagstaff off of I-17. And so I'm real excited about that opportunities. One is helping with traffic into Flagstaff, and also the pedestrian traffic that we see on McConnell leading onto the on-ramps and off-ramps of I-17. And so I'm looking forward to alleviating some of that issues that we see there. And then the third thing is the City of Flagstaff is working with Audra Merrick of partnership opportunities for the next coming year and maybe the 2 and 3 years plans of what we can do with the City of Flagstaff dollars that we're going to be bringing to the table. As I mentioned before, we met with you last time, the City of Flagstaff voters approved $200 million of new dollars for the next decades of infrastructure projects concerning transportation. And so I'm excited that the City of Flagstaff can bring dollars to the table to partnership with ADOT on future projects, and looking forward to those. So enjoy your week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Bill Lenhart.
Good morning, Board. I don't want to fatigue, I'm Bill Lenhart, Sunbelt Development. I'm not going to fatigue you with the conversations that we've had over the last several days or months regarding Rancho Santa Fe Parkway, but I do want to express our thanks for you investing this extra time to spend in our market, touring the community, meeting with our stakeholders, and we look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Eva Corbett.
Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Eva Corbett. I live in Bullhead City, Arizona. As you know, we're a very rural community, but we have a lot of visitors that come to visit the Colorado River. We are on the border of Nevada and California, so we have drivers from all over, different ages, young, old, and middle-aged, a few middle-aged people to come to our area. Anyway, the reason I'm here is to read your words from a report on December 7th. It says, I'm not a big fan of roundabouts. It's page 33. But the problem is that I've been hearing is there are a lot of drivers out there that just don't like them, primarily because they don't understand them. And I think ADOT could usually do a really good job of taking a look at some of the roundabouts that have been constructed and giving the numbers and doing the studies and the analysis of what sort of accident rates are out there. I'm talking about accidents. Sorry about that. One second. As you know, roundabouts do slow down traffic, but our drivers don't know how to drive. So they don't know how to manage a roundabout. If you're toting a trailer that's 30 feet long, getting through a roundabout, and you have an 18-wheeler right beside you, you're going to panic and just stop. And therefore, it's going to cause an accident and tie up traffic for miles and miles and miles. And we don't have a way around it where we live. So please consider not putting roundabouts on Highway 95 in Mojave County. Please, we ask you. Me as a senior citizen, and most of our community are senior citizens. Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate you giving me this time.
Thank you. Next up, Vincent Gallegos, Lake Havasu MPO Director.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Would like to especially acknowledge the continued work with local ADOT staff. Really appreciate just the continuous efforts locally through our district engineer, Alvin Stump, and his staff. Really continue to take on some issues that arise immediately, and we appreciate that. I want to follow up on some of the comments that Vice Mayor David Lane from Lake Havasu City, who also sits on the MPO board, expressed. I think we've had some incredible partnerships with some landscaping along SR 95 and through Lake Havasu City, through the region. What I would like to add to Vice Mayor Lane's request for for greater attention on SR 95 is, excuse me, there was a corridor study that was performed by ADOT a little over a year ago, and it covered about 169 miles that ran all of SR 95 from the I-40 all the way down to the I-8 in Yuma. And of that 169 mile study, it was the 3-mile segment that was identified number one in Lake Havasu City for safety improvements. And that's what Vice Mayor Lane was highlighting was, you'll be on your agenda, I saw, approving hopefully a contract for improvements at SR 95 in Kiowa. And we appreciate all the work that, again, Alvin has helped us with that to get it to this point. We're sorry some of the more recent mistakes that have happened. However, moving forward, we would like to continue that partnership and be able to do safety improvements in this 3-mile section. We understand the needs are great. We understand the resources are small. So we're realistic. We are doing the best we can to be partners. And we're looking at this point of being able to partner with ADOT to add a traffic signal in this 3-mile segment. So the MPO would like to work with ADOT to on these safety improvements. In that study, the safety improvements were estimated around $60 million. So we realize, again, the resources just aren't out there, but we would like to take really a bite out of the elephant at a time. So that's why we're going to start with this traffic signal, and we would ask for any help that you're able to do in that partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent. Next up, Kingman Mayor Jen Miles.
Good morning, Chairman Sellers, members of the board, and staff. Thank you so much for being here today and definitely for taking the time yesterday to tour our city and visit the interchange sites for West Kingman, Kingman Crossing, and Rancho Santa Fe. Also, thank you for taking time to meet some of our industrial leaders who are among the many who would like to expand or locate their businesses here. The Kingman Airport and Industrial Park represents the largest concentration of industries outside of Maricopa, and the thousands of jobs created there forge a backbone of our economy. Our good fortune is that there is increasing demand for industrial growth here because of our strategic assets that support development as a regional transportation and logistics hub. We are at the crossroads of major highways, including the I-11 corridor. Existing rail and air support transloading capability, and we have plentiful land that is available for industrial development. But as you heard yesterday and before, the limiting factor for our industrial development is the need for a second road in and out of the airport and industrial park, the Rancho Santa Fe Interchange and Parkway. This direct link between I-40 and the industrial park will open up over 2,400 acres for development immediately, in which we can provide an inventory of shovel-ready industrial sites and modern spec shell buildings for our targeted sector industries. The projections for job and revenue growth are striking, with economic benefit to the entire state. Importantly, Rancho Santa Fe Parkway will provide a second ingress and egress for the truck and vehicles going in and out of the park. We have over 5,000 trips per day in and out of the park now, and all of these vehicles are entering and exiting through one road off of Andy Devine, or Route 66, our major tourism road. That safety hazard has been reflected in accident statistics that exceed state averages, including turnover of trucks exiting the park. So getting an alternative road will reduce the hazards associated with the accidents and decrease maintenance costs on Andy Devine associated with heavy truck traffic. So as you're aware, the City of Kingman and our partners are asking you to join us in building this critically needed infrastructure of Rancho Santa Fe Interchange and Parkway. We ask that the Transportation Board put the Rancho Santa Fe project back on the 5-year plan and for you to become a fiscal partner with a contribution of $20 million toward the interchange. Together with matching funds and contributions that our partners provide, we can build the interchange and parkway and advance a vibrant Northwest Arizona transportation and logistics hub that will benefit the entire state. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful time the rest of the day in Kingman.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, Stephen Robinson. On deck is Keith Kentner.
Good morning, Board. I've driven numerous times throughout Maricopa County, and I'm constantly impressed by the quality of the highways and roads, especially the beautiful concrete murals along the highways, along Loops 101, 202, and 303. And I've been on the roads and highways throughout rural Arizona, but the qualities of these roads are not so impressive, to say the least. In fact, too many of them are in poor to terrible condition. But while many Maricopa citizens drive down throughout the rural parts of the county or state enjoying the beauty on our roads, very few people from the rural parts make it into Maricopa County and appreciate those roads. The issue is that the funding formula for distribution of HERF funds is based upon population, not on the areas of the counties. So while Maricopa grows in more population and more funds are directed there, it's done to the detriment of the rural Arizona counties, including Mojave. In fact, I can only imagine that the future loops 404, 505, or 606 may become double-decker or even triple-decker freeways because there's just not as much land as you would like to think in Maricopa County. My recommendation and suggestion, and it has to go through the legislature, is that you consider some kind of a split formula where part of it is based upon population, but another part would be based upon either the areas of the counties or the number of the miles of roads in those counties so that more money can be equitably distributed to the rural areas. And because you can only have so much growth in Maricopa County before you're like New York City, Philadelphia, or LA. So I hope you will consider looking at this issue because, like everybody else has said, we need more funding out here in the rural parts, especially here. In the 2000 census, they did a projection of where Mojave County would be in the year 2050, which is only about 32 years away now. They projected at that time that there would be a 1.2 million population. Well, with the I-11 corridor and the I-40, that makes that a distinct possibility. So we need to be forward-looking on it and figure out a way how to be in advance of that growth so that we can be ready and also meet the needs of the citizens of all Arizona and our neighbors that come and visit this state so that we can have quality roads, both county, city, and the highways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Keith Kentner, and on deck is Tom Carter.
Welcome to Kingman, Chairman and members of the board. Glad to see you guys back here again. As some previous speakers have talked about, our mayor and what Steve just said, I'll add to that. I've been a resident here of Kingman just for about 2.5 years, but enjoy living here. Want to see some of the congestion relieved with the I-11, I-40 interchange project. That needs to be done as soon as possible if you can move that up on the calendar. And the other two projects dealing with our industrial park, that access needs to be improved desperately. It will help the growth and development of the city, county, and also be good for the state of Arizona if we can do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom Carter?
I'm Tom Carter, a 25-year resident of Kingman, and I want to thank you folks for coming to listen to us today and to visit our area, and welcome to Route 66. Kingman has enjoyed an average growth of about 2.5% a year since I have been in this area. And if you extrapolate that, that's quite a bit of growth since I was first here. And we were very excited for quite some time about what was known as Rattlesnake Wash, which was on the 5-year ADOT plan. Unfortunately, at the time that it would come to fruition, we were unable to fund it, as I understand. Now we have a new opportunity. It's a new time. The economy is better. The outlook is still pretty strong. And we have a developer who is ready, willing, and able, and is investing in making Rancho Santa Fe happen to help his land and to help the Airport Industrial Park and airport to be able to grow. And I think the opportunity is now, folks. I hope you will seriously consider looking at funding this interchange and making Kingman grow and enrich the state at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I had. Anything else, Mr. Rourke?
Mr. Chair, I do not have any other cards either, so I would say we can end call to the audience and move on.
Thank you. We'll now move to item number 1, the Director's Report for information and discussion only.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to apologize for being late to the dais as you started the meeting, but I was involved in an intense conversation with Mr. Husted, who had many important things to convey. So my apologies, sir. Mr. Chairman, I want to go ahead and combine, if I could, my report with the legislative report, and if you're okay with that, we can knock both of them out at once, since
Very good. Thank you.
seems to be what's happening mostly right now. I just want to make everyone aware the governor's budget will be released tomorrow, and that will be released for legislative consideration. So we're looking forward to seeing if there will be some things in there to enhance transportation. As you know, there has been a $32 public safety fee established, which I was ordered to calculate by the legislature and establish that fee. That fee was established due to the long history of complaints about sweeping HERF money out for the Department of Public Safety. So the $32 fee, based on our calculations of 5.8 million vehicles that are eligible to pay the fee, will generate, with the 10% increase that was put into the bill, $185 million for the Highway Patrol budget. This will free up some money, we believe, for road projects in the future, and hopefully this will put an end to any HERF highway fund sweeps to fund the DPS Highway Patrol, thus making those dollars eligible not only to the board but also to the cities and counties through the distribution formula for transportation purposes. On some other notes, there are some bills to repeal that fee. There are some bills to modify it and move it back down to $18. If those are approved, then I think we're going to be facing the same dilemma we have, which is shifts out of the highway fund for DPS, since no other solutions have been offered at this point. There's also a bill to charge snowbirds a registration fee when they come into Arizona, but I have to tell you, I don't really see a logistical way that this would even be possible. Plus, there's implications to our reciprocity with Arizona registrations when we travel to other states. So those are some of the things that are moving around the legislature right now. We did give a presentation to the Senate Transportation and Public Safety Committee on Tuesday of this week, where we presented the state of our finances, projects that we are looking forward to in the future, and improvements at the Motor Vehicle Division. If the board's interested, we'd be happy to share that presentation with you. There are a number of excellent questions. We spent probably about 2 hours with the committee going over transportation issues. From the federal perspective, today marks the 28th day now of the federal government shutdown, beating our old record by 7 days. As far as I can tell, we really don't have an end in sight as I'm following the news and what's happening in D.C. 37% of the United States Department of Transportation workforce is on furlough, although we do have 100% of FHWA and Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration are at work and are being paid. And this is because these agencies are funded out of the Highway Trust Fund, not the federal general fund. We'll provide some more detail about the shutdown during Christine Ward's presentation. I don't think we're in any near or immediate trouble, but sooner or later a solution has to be reached or there will be some impacts. I think she will probably point out we're already seeing some impacts from the transit side for which ADOT is a pass-through. The good news is the House has passed and sent to the Senate a full-year appropriation for U.S. DOT that includes $300 million in additional highway funding, but the Senate will not take up the bill until the President agrees to sign it. On the elected front, our Arizona congressmen have gotten some prime committee assignments. We've got some coveted spots on some of the most exclusive committees. Congressman Lesko was named to the Rules Committee, Congressman Schweikert to Ways and Means, Congressman O'Halloran to Energy and Commerce, and Congressman Kirkpatrick to Appropriations. These are the 4 top committees in Congress, and we're looking to communicate and work with them well to give Arizona some more clout. The new House Transportation Chairman in Washington, Peter DeFazio, is supportive of a gas tax and highway infrastructure funding, and he's announced reauthorization of the FAST Act, which is Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. This is being looked at as a stabilization of the Highway Trust Fund, the Federal Highway Trust Fund, and reinvestment in infrastructure to be among the top priorities for the upcoming Congress. The FAST Act expires in 2020. And the Highway Trust Fund is expected to dip into insolvency at about the same time. So Congress has its work cut out for it since these dual issues are likely to take up a lot of the Transportation Committee's time this year. Chairman DeFazio is expected to pursue an infrastructure plan using modest increases in the gas tax to bond for highway construction projects. There's some driverless car legislation that's moving around the House of Representatives. We look that if they are going to produce a bill, it will likely be more restrictive than we have seen in the past for this industry, so we're keeping an eye on that. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. Be happy to answer any questions if there are some.
Any questions for Director Halikowski? Yeah. Board Member Hammond.
Director, I think you mentioned 170 or 80 million dollars from the VLT tax. How much of that, how's that going to be divvied up, and where does it end up ultimately in our budget?
So, Mr. Chairman, Christine can explain the distribution with far more percentage accuracy than I can, but essentially the $185 million that will fund the DPS Highway Patrol will stop the shifts of, we were seeing shifts of 80 to 130 million from the HERF Highway Fund. And the distribution formula splits it not quite in half. I think it's 45% comes to the state, and the other 55% flows out to the cities and counties. So whatever is remaining in the funds, since we're not shifting out to DPS, will be available for local governments. Thank you. And the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Next up, item number 2, the District Engineer's Report. Mr. Stump.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board, and Director. Just a quick little update on our current projects. On 93, we're going to be doing some crack seal work, and also we're just getting started on a pavement preservation and shoulder widening project up north on 93 in the White Hills to 11th Street area. We're also starting the Carol Stevens segment on 93 just north of Wickiup, so that's great to get that one going. We're still working on the Haviland Rest area, and we're just wrapping up a project in Lake Havasu, local project. And then as far as other projects coming up this year, the Kiowa Safety Project, we'll be doing that this year. We have 2 more projects on 93 to do more pavement preservations and shoulder widening. And then we have a local government project for Mojave County on Pierce Ferry Road, as well as another one on Swanson to Acoma, Acoma Boulevard to Smoke Tree for Lake Havasu. And one of our maintenance projects here in town that we've been looking to get done is there at Stockton Hill Crossroad there, doing a spot repair job there. And just a little update on the West Kingman TI on the enhanced DCR. We do have a consultant on board. I'm told we're going to have notice to proceed any day. It could be today. So we're looking forward to getting that going. Some of the purposes of the enhanced DCR is we got a lot of good feedback from the consultant communities on ideas to make our concept better. One of them is how Bill Street accesses 93 on the west side. They also presented an opportunity to possibly eliminate 300,000 cubic yards of waste, which translates to a little over $3 million. And then the other part's just looking at, how can we accommodate the phase 2, which is the kind of the California to 93 connection in the future. So you can see the original plan for Bill Street to access 93 was, and as well as Fort Bill, was a half diamond interchange. One of the problems with that is the 6% grade on the crossroad. So instead of doing that, we're going to be looking at keeping Bill Street and Fort Bill Street separate, each having an underpass under 93. And that would allow for the Bill Street to 93 traffic to merge kind of in a free flow, as well as 93 traffic going to Bill Street having a little more of a free flow. So I think that'll be a big plus. Also helping on construction phasing too. And then as far as if we change the configuration of the westbound I-40 to 93 flyover, we can, again, eliminate quite a bit of waste material, as well as not leaving a big scar on the side of the mountain there. And the way it would happen would be changing the configuration such that the 93 ramp would be on the left side of I-40 versus being on the right side. And then last is just, again, someday we'll build the phase 2. Is there some opportunities to waste material and take advantage of that, possibly look at some kind of an interim ramp to Bill Street. So those are some of the key elements that we're looking forward to. The plan is still to, once this is done, finish the design in-house. But with that, that's all I have for today. I'll take any questions.
Any questions for, Board Member Stratton?
Alvin, I noticed every community that we visit that you represent, you're very well received and very highly spoke of, and that says a lot for you as a person and a district engineer, and I would like to thank you for that. However, I do have to ask you a question with the tentative 5-year plan coming out, and you being a veteran DE. I have to ask, were the potholes on 93 and I-40 intentionally left until your bosses and the board had to drive that coming up?
Yeah.
Posturing for maybe some more money?
Yeah, I got to make a point. No. Yeah, the storms kind of did some damage this past week there. But thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Stump? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just have a concern about Mr. Stratton trying to educate the rest of the district engineers around the state. So I'm going to see if I can strike his comment from the record.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. Okay, we'll move now to the consent agenda. There was an amendment for items 3F and 3G. These items were originally reported as underestimate and the amendment shows they are overestimate.
And Mr. Chair, on item 3G, also point out that there is administrative correction as well on the bidder's disadvantaged business enterprise DBE pledge. It's 5.52, which is within the conditions of the contract. The board is, the item 3G does meet the conditions to be part of the consent agenda, and the board can action it as part of that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member want any item removed from consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion by Board Member Stratton.
Second.
Second by Board Member Knight. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mission carries. Okay, thank you. Next, we will move to the exciting part of the agenda. Christine Ward will give us some financial information.
No, my agenda had shown that we started with the GAN resolution.
You're starting with a resolution for a grant anticipation note
That's
authorization.
correct. All right, well, there are no slides for that portion of the presentation. So if you will recall, when you approved the 5-year program and I presented it to you, there were a number of bond issues that were assumed as financially supporting that program. And what I'm coming to you with is to ask for your authorization to proceed with one of those issues. So the department is proposing to issue, right along with the plan that we submitted and you approved, to propose $75 million in grant anticipation notes. Now, if you'll recall, grant anticipation notes are leveraging future federal dollars. So we're issuing bonds against future federal revenues. We're planning to issue those with a 15-year term, and we're anticipating interest rates, albeit one is subject to the market. We're anticipating interest rates between about 2.5% and 3.5% on those bonds. We expect to go to the market on March 25th, which I will give you a little caveat about here in a second. But that exact timing, actually, we'll tell you right now, that exact timing is subject to change, particularly given the federal shutdown that we find ourselves in the midst of. And so we'll base it on where we are with the Fed shutdown as well as where we are with overall market and timing conditions, so that might get adjusted somewhat. In the interim, between now and March 25th, if you, Mr. Chairman, you will soon discover that there are quite a few documents that have to be prepared for a bond sale that you will then be required to sign.
I get paid by the signature, right?
I should hope. So in the interim, that's what we'll be doing, is we'll be spending quite a bit of time preparing those documents, the preliminary official statements, going through the underwriter selection process, meeting and discussing with the rating agencies and doing our presentations there, and so forth. And that's what will be taking place between now and the actual sale. As we get closer and we see what market conditions look like, as we feel out more what's happening with the federal shutdown, we may have to adjust our plans, but that's where we are at this moment. And I would ask for the board's authorization to proceed with the issue.
Board Member Hammond.
You know, I may have even asked this question before, but if for some reason, you know, the feds don't come through with the money, is this, do the bondholders take the risk? Is it insured, or does the state ultimately take the risk?
The state, Arizona's in a very preferable position in that we have a backstop. We have, if the Fed dollars, if we ever run into a situation where Fed dollars are not available, then we will utilize HERF dollars to actually pay those debt service costs.
Okay, so ultimately then we're guaranteeing the bonds.
We are.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons we enjoy a significantly high rating with the rating agencies.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the adoption of authorizing resolution grant application notes 2019A as presented?
I so move.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Elters, seconded by Board Member Hammond. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can have a financial report.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's move on here. So, reporting on the highway user revenue funds, we are actually running a little outside of our forecast target zone, and well, if you have to run outside of your target zone, running above it is preferable. What we've got is year-to-date, we're about 3.2% above forecast with a little over $750 million in revenues. The primary drivers behind that over forecast we are seeing diesel, our used fuel revenues running above forecast, as well as VLT revenues. Moving on to the Regional Area Road Fund, we are right on target there. We've got about $187 million collected thus far, with that is about 7.5% growth year to date. Just a little, as you can see, just a titch over forecast. So let's talk about the federal shutdown just a bit. We've had some interesting developments over the last couple of weeks as FHWA put out a notice with regards to the shutdown and the funding of the program. Basically, because there is not a continuing resolution in place or a budget bill in place, the funding for the highway program defaults to the long-term authorization from the FAST Act. So what occurred is that we actually have received our full funding for 2019. However, along with that notice that FHWA provided, they provided some guidelines, or I should say some cautionary notes. If Congress then chooses to come in and provide a continuing resolution that would essentially override the FAST Act figures, they could actually appropriate us less funding than is incorporated into the FAST Act. So let's say we get $750 million for a full year from the FAST Act. They could actually authorize a continuing resolution that only gives us money through a particular period of time, thus not giving us the full $750. So what this requires of us is to behave very prudently. And while there will not be any slowdown in our project delivery, what we are doing is we are just maintaining the current project delivery schedule that we have in place. And we are maintaining very close communications with FHWA as we move through this federal shutdown situation. So while the Fed shutdown is concerning and we are paying close attention, the program is not in any jeopardy at this point. With that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, Board Member Stratton.
Christine, does this have, the shutdown have any effect on the airport revenues through the FAA and the grants that we have approved?
I do not know the immediate answer to that. We have, Board Member Stratton, let me get back to you on impacts on the airport program if they're probably de minimis.
My concern being that I believe the FAA is 90% of the grants, where we're 5 and the local match is 5.
That is correct.
I'm wondering if we need to put a hold on any future grants until the shutdown's over so we can make sure we can complete what we have already approved.
Yeah, yes, I will check on the status of those grants. I believe we have enough grants already underway that it is not impacting us at this point. But let me get back to you with more detail on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Christine?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Christine to touch on any transit issues that we've noticed from the shutdown?
Mr. Chair, Director Halakowski, yes, we have most certainly had to make some transitions with regards to the transit program. We have approximately 12 to 14 folks within ADOT that are staff that are funded out of that program, and we have basically had to transition them to other duties. And fortunately, we don't. Our people typically don't do just one thing, so we are able to transition them to other duties. Now, as far as the program itself, yes, we have a program that is largely on hold.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Next, agenda item 6, Multimodal Planning Division Report. Greg Byers.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, unfortunately Greg Byers isn't feeling well, and I'm Clem Legaki, and I'm happy to come off the bench and help out today and provide information on
Didn't think you looked like Greg.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
It would probably be better if I did look more like Greg, but...
Mr. Chairman, I just have to say that Clem's been around a long time. When I started with ADOT in 1990, he was already a veteran there, so he's not as young as he looks.
Well, we try. Thank you, sir. Well, I have a couple of things that I'd like to add in terms of MPD and a little bit of the planning impacts from the government shutdown. To build a little bit on that, the transit information. So there are a number of areas that are affected, and one of those is processing reimbursements to providers. So I will say that, I'd like to compliment our really strong team on the transit side, especially Jill Dusenberry, who leads that team. Knowing what's coming, they look ahead and prepared and really worked very hard to get things set up so that when this is all done, that they can get right back in. But still, there are significant delays in terms of processing reimbursements, training, and et cetera, that goes along with the program that's delayed, particularly in regard to the application cycle for the Section 5310 program, which is the elderly and disabled program. So there's a lot of work that's been done to get ready, but a lot that's been delayed, so we have significant delays there. And then there are also vehicle orders that are being delayed, so that's also a significant thing. So those are just a few of the things on the transit side. And of course, we've been saying what we can to the providers out there in the MPOs and COGs so that they know what's going on. And, outside of the tangible fiscal and things you can get your hands on, those types of impacts, there's the whole stress and emotional side of it, and there's a lot of people out there that are very concerned, and we know they are, so we're all, trying to stick together and hang in there through this. So we'll say that. And then the other thing that is being affected is studies that we have going on. And of course, I-11, the draft EIS, is one of those things. It's because we have various cooperating federal agencies involved that are not actively engaged right now. And, so other statewide studies that we have are also being delayed for those types of reasons. So we're hanging in there on those. So, but we're in pretty good shape, and we're just prepared for this, and we should be fine. And then the other thing that I'd like to talk about is just the status of the 5-year program. We know that on the 29th of January, we have the study session coming up to present the tentative 5-year program to you. And we've been working hard on that, meeting regularly with leadership to get guidance and processing our planning to programming results, which are being checked, and make sure everything's in order to get you information that you need very soon for that study session that will be on the 29th. So we're working very hard on that, and I'd like to publicly recognize Dan Gabbio, who's doing a lot of that work, and Brett Anderson, and also Ermelinda Jean, who's doing a lot of the tribal coordination part, which is also very important to us. And all those things are coming together, and we expect to be ready for you and for the study session on the 29th. So with that, that's all I have for the MPD report.
Okay, we'll then move on to item number 7, PPAC items for discussion and possible action. You're still up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members. Today we have 7 project modifications, 6 new projects, and 2 airport projects. And unless there are any specific questions, we could move to the project modifications, which are items 7A through 7H. I would like to request approval of those items.
Is there a motion to approve P-PAC project modification items 7A through 7G?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Board Member Knight, second by Board Member Hammond.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify? You said 7G, but Clem, you said 7H. Is there, do we need clarification on what are the modification items?
Let me double check. I think it is 7A through 7G, but let me double check one other thing.
I'd be amazed if I made a mistake.
No, Mr. Chair, I don't think you did. I was trying to be
As would we all, Mr.
considerate
Chair.
to Clem, but, because I had 7G as well in my notes that Linda said, oh, that's it, Linda's not here, she made a mistake.
Okay, I think you're right that 7H begins the new project, so I apologize. It is 7A through
7G.
7G. Thank you.
Right again, Mr. Chairman. Your record stands intact.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then for the new projects, Floyd got up real early this morning. I know that because I was there and I saw him having breakfast. So I'm glad that he caught that. And so then moving forward, then the new projects would be 7H through 7M. I'd like to request approval of those.
Okay, is there a motion to approve P-PAC items, new items, 7H through 7M?
I so move.
Second.
Motion by Board Member Elters, second by Board Member Stratton. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then we have the two airport projects, 7N and 7O, and I introduced a little confusion here this morning, but you might recall at the previous meeting, we had a little bit of confusion on items 7U and 7V, and the board agenda showed that we only went up to 7U, but we thought there was a V, and so the project that you have today, which is 7O, the Phoenix Sky Harbor project, is the one that was left over from the last time, and we're catching that today, just to answer that question. So I would ask approval of those, if you so deem it appropriate.
Is there a motion to approve P-PAC airport projects, items 7N and 7O?
So moved.
Motion by Board Member Elters, second by Board Member Knight. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8, State Engineers Report. Mr. Hammett.
Yes. Yeah, we had our rooms mixed up. Mr. Hammond and Mr. Hammett did at the motel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, ADOT, we have 95 projects under construction totaling about $1.6 billion. 9 projects were finalized in November totaling $55 million. And year to date, we have finalized 53 projects. During the State Engineers Report, I did want to update the board on 2 items. One is in the last few meetings, we've had conversations on one of our projects. This was the I-10 Fairway Drive projects. If you remember, it came to the board in October. I asked the board to postpone so I could hold a hearing. In November, we brought the project up. The board wanted to look at more, so there was a special meeting. And then in December, the board awarded to the apparent low bidder. As we were preparing for that, one of the things we thought was a possibility was we could go to court. And so before that meeting, we talked to both bidders and agreed that we would not sign a contract until January 11th. That way, in case they wanted to sue, there was time for them to make their filings. What the second bidder did choose to file a suit. It was filed on December 31st. And there was the first hearing on January 8th, which at that point, the court did put a hold on signing the contract. But at the same time, the court saw the need to expedite it, and we held a hearing, an evidentiary hearing this week on the 15th and 16th. At that point, at the end of the hearing, the judge ruled from the bench and ruled in favor of ADOT and Sunland. And in that process, they were looking at two issues. One, did ADOT have the authority to do the job-by-job pre-qualification? And if so, was the decision of the pre-qualification board the right decision? In hearing that, the judge basically said that the time period to challenge the job-by-job was before the bid. The contractor was well aware of the ADOT's process. They had used it in the past. So they knew if they felt it was not a proper thing to do, they could have challenged before. So they lost their standing there. And in the evidence, they went through our chairman, interviewed our chairman of our pre-qualification board. The judge found that our process was proper. We have experts on the panel and saw no problem with what we were doing. So he lifted the stay, and in fact, we signed a contract with Sunland yesterday. So that project is under contract. Fisher Industries does have an opportunity to appeal, and my last correspondence that they were still weighing that option, but we are moving forward and have signed a contract with Sunland.
Okay, thank you.
The second thing I wanted to brief the board is, as we've gone through this year, we've seen a lot of cost increases. And so as staff, we've been looking at how do we get ahead of that. And we've developed a construction cost, or we're in the process of developing a construction cost index. And where we're at to date, we've looked at, well, what are the major items of construction that we're seeing higher than expected pricing, and then how can we get some trends and predict those. And overall, what we've seen is with using those major items, we're seeing an increase of about 20% on those major type items. Asphaltic concrete, just the oil, it hasn't changed a lot in what we're seeing. It's about 3%. Reinforcing steel, 47% increase. The flat work concrete, our curb and gutter, sidewalks, that sort of thing, about a 10% increase. Bridges, 31% increase. What we don't have yet, and that we're still working on, is how can I've asked, can we separate the material and the labor? So we can really see, because what we're hearing from the industry, labor is very expensive and hard to get. I want to get that information as well. So we'll be continuing that index, and it'll help us in our estimating for the future. And that's all I had for the state engineer report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll make a comment, and this will probably make our attorney nervous, but perhaps when the South Mountain Freeway is done, it might bring some of these things back into some better perspective from a labor standpoint and some of the cost increases because the labor shortage is associated with the magnitude of that job.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one thing to be aware, that is definitely a huge thing, but we have a $500 million job on the books that will follow it right away with the I-10 Broadway curve. So we may see some relief, but we still have some big work coming up in the MAG region that will have a lot of labor needs as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
could I just touch on a subject? Because I think the picture gets a little fuzzy. You know, the economy's doing well. Our revenues seem to be above projection. I think we had a banner year this year in recovering from the recession in that we had one of our best revenue years ever, yet we're still facing a lot of needs out in the state. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is I-10 in Tucson. I know we've got some pavement unraveling there and the plans to go back to concrete on a certain area of I-10, which we're seeing around some other places in the state. So I just want to be clear that although the revenue picture is looking better, we still have a lot of unmet needs out there. And I also want to be clear that some of these things the board may hear about. And Dallas, I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on going back to concrete instead of putting rubberized asphalt back on certain sections.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Director. As you know, on many of our areas where our pavement section is concrete, we overlay it with a rubberized asphalt. That does two things. It seals the concrete, but also it helps us with noise. We do not account when we do noise mitigation. We don't get credit for that, but we know it does diminish some noise effects, especially for the automobiles. You can hear that when you drive it. In Tucson, in one area, and we have similar things in the Phoenix metropolitan area, where that friction course has been down beyond its life. And there's not a program in place to update it as fast as it's falling apart. So we are going to, in the case in Tucson, mill up the asphalt. The concrete is, a pavement section, definitely able to handle the traffic, but it'll be a concrete section that the wearing course where the drivers will be driving on versus a rubberized asphalt. So there may be some folks that come in and say, why don't we have the asphalt? And we are looking at when we can put that back, but immediately we need to stop the windshields from being broke and get that.
The P3 law, and we've just this month re-upped that contract or rebid that contract and had it awarded for another 5-year period to do all of our rest areas under a single contract. And we've also used it for vertical facilities for buildings. For example, we just signed a contract to redo our Flagstaff district headquarters by doing a land swap between the city, the state, and a private developer who's going to redevelop an old movie theater that will become our new district headquarters in Flagstaff, and that's a project we'd like to talk to you some more about. So we are using this delivery mechanism and quite successfully. Now, sometimes tolls are used as a repayment, especially for highway-oriented P3s, but not always. You can use regular state revenues or bond proceed funds or any other type of funds that we can use for regular highway projects, design bid build projects. We can use that as a repayment source for P3s. So the benefit of tolls really is that it brings additional revenue into the system, not that you necessarily have to use this approach to deliver a project as a P3. So let me talk quickly about federal options for tolling interstate highways. This is an interstate. So as a blanket statement, tolling is generally not allowed on interstate highways, and now I'm about to give you all of the exceptions in which it actually can be used for interstate highways now, and the feds have gotten a bit looser about that over the last several years. So it can be, tolls can be used under certain circumstances. There is a series of narrowly defined pilot projects, the value pricing pilot projects, it's a lot of P's, that is a program under federal law. It used to be limited to just 3 pilot spots. Now it is open to anyone to apply for, but no one has applied for it, so I think that tells you how restrictive the federal limitations are. So even though it's available, quite narrowly defined. Then there's Section 166 in federal law, which is an HOV to hot lane conversion. That's an instance where HOV lanes that are high occupancy vehicle or carpool lanes can be used by single occupancy vehicles for a fee. And you basically add tolling infrastructure to those lanes. That's generally for either the conversion of HOV lanes or when you add an additional lane that can be used for HOV or hot lane purposes. And if any of you have driven to Los Angeles on I-10 lately, you'll see that that's been imposed on I-10 in Los Angeles County, and that they're continuing to add a lane and moving it further eastward all the time. It will eventually hit the San Bernardino County line and will go all the way on I-10 through LA County. And that, again, HOV lane that allows single occupancy vehicles if they pay a toll. And then there's Section 129, which is sort of the general tolling section. It allows entities to toll newly constructed lanes on existing interstate highways, so new capacity. And then it also has another provision that allows, it says initial construction, but that really also includes reconstruction of highways, bridges, and tunnels on interstate highways. State law is even a bit more restrictive. Arizona state statute does allow for tolls, and it gives ADOT the authority to collect the tolls or to give that authority to a private partner through a contractual arrangement. And that would be permissible on federal highways consistent with federal law. However, state law does not permit tolling on existing highways of any kind, so it would need to be new construction, additional capacity. And state law also does not permit tolling without a free option in, quote, reasonable proximity. That isn't defined as anything more than reasonable, but I think you can imagine what kinds of things might go into an assessment of a reasonable free alternative. We have gone down this road in the past with I-15 and thinking about whether it's possible to toll that highway. So in 2013, ADOT actually applied for one of those value pricing toll slots that were available at the time for only three locations around the country. And we actually went through the process of applying for that with federal law and caused a political maelstrom of rather enormous proportions. So it was quickly withdrawn. There was strenuous opposition, of course, from the few 100,000 people who live up in that corner of the state, but really far more vocal were the states of Nevada and Utah that were really objecting to the idea of putting a toll on this. So because the uproar was quick and severe, we withdrew our application and never really took the additional steps of working with Nevada and Utah to seeing if it could be possible to expand the toll into their states, share the revenues, and it's certainly possible today with modern tolling technology to provide exemptions for residents who live in the area. But again, the response was so quick that we just withdrew the proposal and went ahead, as Floyd mentioned, to apply for a Tiger grant and look for some other options for reconstructing those bridges. So in conclusion, ADOT could seek federal approval under Section 129 for tolling reconstructed bridges, but the response we would get from federal highways is uncertain. As I said, the limitations are quite restrictive and it is unclear whether this would qualify. State law, on the other hand, is pretty clear that it can really only be new highways or lanes. The type of work that is being done on those bridges, basically deck reconstruction, it's very unclear whether that would really qualify for new construction. All the rest of the bridges of the structures are being held over. It's not a complete tear down and rebuild. So it seems like that would be questionable, I think, under state law to move ahead with that. However, P3 procurement and delivery options could be used on the I-15 bridges, regardless of the funding source, and we're always looking for opportunities to use P3 procurement and development processes. So that's my update on the possibility of tolling, and very happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, well, I don't want to labor this because there's probably not a whole lot that we can do, but I think you do understand that the frustration that we feel is with such limited statewide funds to do things that are important for our state's economy. And when Interstate 15 is doing virtually nothing for our state's economy, it's really a problem for us to see that as a priority. And so it still seems like the solution would be to try to find some way for that to be user funded. And I don't know whether tolling is even a viable solution anywhere down the road, but you know, I think that finding some way to have the people that are actually using that road paying for it would be of great benefit to our state. Board Member Stratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your comments. I am the one that asked for this to be put on the agenda, and as Floyd said earlier, we did approve today another $6.2 million or $3 million to go on that project, on that road. I believe in the past, and please correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I believe we were exempted from adding a lane on that due to the environmental sensitivity of the gorge by the feds the last time you looked at this, or it was at least discussed, I believe.
So, Mr. Chairman, Board Member Stratton, I don't know if we were denied. I think the geography is very difficult to go in and add lanes. It is an extremely environmentally sensitive area. And so that would be, I think, a huge cost, but I'd ask Dallas, who studied that, or Gail to comment on adding an extra lane. I just don't know that we'd be able to physically do that, Dallas.
We're engineers, we can do lots of
Oh,
stuff.
I forgot.
But
You can do
it
anything.
would be extremely expensive and quite a bit of environmental concerns. So we're never told no, but financially to add lanes and the environmental impacts would take a long time. So it wasn't a hard no, but it's very unlikely that you could do it with the geography.
Absolutely, I don't believe we could do it with the current state of affairs. What I'm asking is, did the federal or FHWA exempt us from adding an additional lane?
Oh, I see.
And I'm sorry I didn't explain that well, but I thought we had talked about that being exempted from that at one time due to that environmental concern.
It is a unique structure in a very unique place. I think we were looking more towards Section 129 and the ability of using the tolling of bridges instead of the lane or an exemption from tolling existing interstates. So as Gail had said, the feds have loosened up over the years, and I think there are some states that have successfully tolled their bridges without adding capacity.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the Section 129, which does allow, so the kind of reconstruction that we're doing, the bridge deck, federal law probably would allow us to toll that. State law is more restrictive, and state law is unclear. I think that would need to be clarified if we were going to pursue that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
The other thing I'd point out is that I think it was mentioned by the chairman, is it viable? And I think the traffic counts per day, Gail, probably would make it a viable.
From a straight traffic and revenue perspective, these are very expensive projects. It's hard to generate those kind of revenues no matter how high the tolls are. But from a traffic and revenue perspective, we could certainly get a contribution, substantial contribution toward those costs with a toll, with a reasonable
So the
toll.
last time I checked, this was when Mr. McGee was still with us, before he passed on. I think the traffic count for trucks was 21,000 per day roughly.
And it's definitely increased since then. Those were the 2012 numbers, so it's definitely gone
Will
up.
likely continue to increase as we see more and more freight movements per the federal calculations for the future.
My largest concern over this stretch of road, as the chairman mentioned, it doesn't really serve Arizona to any degree. My biggest concern is that rural Arizona burdens or shoulders the whole burden of the cost of this particular freeway. And out of the potential, I believe Floyd said another $160 million worth of work, that money could do well for Kingman and their projects, or a multitude of other cities, towns, and counties across our state, Greater Arizona, or the TOC as we call it, 13 other counties. We don't have the money that MAG and PAG have and can get the help. So it's the only solution I can see at this point in time to free up money for projects in the rest of rural Arizona. And in saying that, I would appreciate any help. I know that ADOT has received a multitude of resolutions from cities, towns, MPOs, counties across the state. I believe, as we talked the last time this was brought up in 13, I think Mojave County had some objections to it, and it was probably because of their citizens in Littlefield and well understood, but I think that's been addressed by state law now by people in the near proximity that they would get a free pass somehow through that. The other interesting thing I find is, having traveled through Utah this past summer, they toll their fast lanes and their hot lanes, but yet they object to us tolling anything. And as I said 2 years ago, I really don't care what Nevada and Utah think, as long as they're not putting any money into this thing. If they want to pony up some money, then I think they have a say. But until that point in time, my job and the rest of this board's job is to represent Arizona, all of Arizona. And there's a multitude of projects we're asked for every month that we're in session and not in session. and it's hard to tell you people no. They're viable projects, they're needed projects, but we just don't have the money. But yet we are forced by federal law to spend the kind of money we're spending on I-15, which does no good for Arizona. So thank you for my stage. I got my spiel out, but I would really like for us to go through this as far as we can and look into it and see if there's anything we can do to try and alleviate the burden on rural Arizona.
Mr. Chairman, not to belabor the point, but I do have a couple of thoughts myself. First and foremost, I want to echo with what my fellow board members are saying, the degree of challenge and the frustration with this. And if you, this was a very informative presentation. Thank you, Gail. The fact that we had opposition the first time we tried it, and it was strong in nature that we withdrew our application, should not prevent us from reconsidering, I suppose. At least that's where I'm coming from. Indeed, and I understand the nature of this. This is an interstate. It's part of the grid that connects the country together and ties us. So we have, as a state, we have an obligation, and it's not just from the goodness of our heart, but we are expected when you have federal dollars to maintain the interstate within. However, having said all that, the impact of this on funding is real and genuine, and there's got to be a solution. And you know, it seems like there are constraints from the system, from the laws, federal laws and such, but those are getting more flexible, loosening up perhaps. And political opposition, one can perhaps work through. I can't help but echo what I heard from Board Member Stratton, and that is it's easy to oppose something when it's, you know, when it's away from you, yet when somebody else is bearing the burden for it. As far as the local opposition, I think technology has advanced to a point where you can exempt and find a way to do it. So with that said, I think it's truly worth the effort to consider it again. Where we get with it, I would like to think there is some relief somewhere down the road. And if tolling is indeed an option, whether it generates enough fund to cover all the cost or provides some of the cost, some real funding, then that would be, I would think, worthwhile. You know, so to that end, I'm just throwing my voice along with other board members to say we need to do something. What that is, I think we can discuss and debate, but take another shot at it. And you know, before I-15 through the river, Gorge River Canyon was constructed, there were other means to get up from Arizona into Utah, and that was through State Route 91, which is still there today, but it's a county highway. So not tolling in the canyon itself, but tolling somewhere on either side of it within the state, if that is an option. Again, I'm just saying I believe it's worth the effort. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to echo my fellow board members, but I think we should try the toll again. I think that would make a P3 far more viable with the tolling added.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is a heavy lift, and we're going to need help from the board, I think, in talking to local communities and leaders, because when we tried this the last time, you know, and history is always a great teacher, perhaps we could have done more prep work prior to announcing the letter of intent that we sent to the federal government. Because as Gail said, the blowback was pretty quick, and I think a large part of that was a lack of education on how such a structure, P3, might work. But the governor of Utah was pretty, I would say, outspoken in his criticism, saying that Arizona gets federal bridge funds just like we do, and I'm paraphrasing, if they can't manage their money properly, that's not Utah's problem. The Interstate 15 is largely used by cross-state traffic, and we've looked into whether or not, some sort of fuel taxes or something might pay for that, but in a 30-mile stretch, the amount of gallonage burned is de minimis. So you're really looking at, how you can work a P3 with some sort of viable toll option, but I think you're also going to need probably some work at the legislature, because the Trucking Association in Arizona, and actually I think their position nationwide, is they do not want and they very strongly oppose tolls. So you've got some very heavy lobbies out there who are going to be working against any state law change if we were to go in and say, look, this is a very unique area of the state, very unique infrastructure, very unique environmentally, and perhaps there needs to be an exemption in the state law about tolling existing facilities. So there are a number of things that I just want to make you aware of as we move forward, that it's not a question of traffic count or whether a P3 could work up there. It's educating the policymakers and the public that this is a viable option, because right now, as things stand, I think we'd have a very tough time moving forward without that taking place.
We have a state representative here that would like to speak on this issue. Is that permissible? No?
I look to the
Mr. Chair, I don't know if you heard that, but Ms. Guzman had said that she does not think that that's an option.
Pardon, I didn't.
The board's attorney said that she does not think that's an option.
Okay, thank you.
To have them speak on this topic.
Since it was agended, I thought perhaps it would be acceptable to do that, but.
Well, Mr. Chair, might I suggest is let us go back and continue to look into this some more, and maybe perhaps if you're inclined, we could schedule a future agenda item for an update and then have folks come in and speak to it if they wish.
Mr. Chair, I do have one suggestion. You could open the call to the audience for any last-minute items somebody may want to fill out a form and ask for, but they will get 3 minutes to talk on the subject of their choice.
Okay. Would that be something that the representative could do for us?
Thank you.
I'd like to reopen the call to the audience.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting on that, I do have another comment, if you would allow.
Okay.
Having been in the past positions I've been in local governments, the city manager and acting county manager, I will very gladly volunteer my time to work with the League of Cities and Towns and CSA, as I have in the past, to help promote this if the administration would need the help or want it.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Board Member Stratton. Mr. Chairman, I guess while we're waiting, the other thing I'd point out is we do have some folks in Congress, and if there are federal issues that we need to tackle, that might be another area for us to approach.
Okay. All right, my next speaker is Representative Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members and director. And thank you for allowing me to speak on this today. I actually was not supposed to be working in Kingman today. I'm supposed to be in Phoenix, and I thought that the I-11 project that we were looking at today was important enough for me to sit in and listen on today, so I came in for that. This is just an addition to that. I am willing to work with you guys on this, and I can be the conduit between the federal and what you guys are going to be doing on the state level. And I understand that this has been a major financial implications on ADOT for many years. And I think that we have changed leadership in Nevada and in Utah, and I think that there's some capacity for them to look at this. And if we, I know there's all kinds of options we can do, but I think that we need to start looking at it and possibly working on a solution for this next year. It might not be something we can introduce or get bills passed this year, but at least if we start looking and working towards that, that might be something that we can modify state statute in the future.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Representative Cobb. With your permission, I'll contact your office and set up a meeting. Perhaps we can come over and visit and talk about some of the issues and directions we might go in. I really would appreciate the help. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And Mr. Dorn said he would do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cobb. And by the way, she is the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the House. Thank you.
I will have to say Mr. Dorn is not allowed. Just kidding, Tom.
Okay. Any suggestions from board members for future agenda items?
Mr. Chair, if I could just cover a couple of real quick topics, just to remind the board that we do have a study session on January 29th, Tuesday the 29th, and we are tracking a few items for that. I just want to make the board aware of. And of course, Mr. Chair, next week you and I will discuss with Ms. Priano. We'll finalize the agenda, get it distributed. But we do have an overview of the tentative 5-year program, and at that time we had asked, Board Member Thompson had asked that we specifically provide more detail on kind of the project evaluation and prioritization process. So that will be included in the discussion on the tentative program. Mr. Hammond had asked that we overview the contractor pre-qualification process, so we're going to delve back into that a little bit just to make sure that we've answered any final questions from the board given what transpired. I thought that it might be a good time to also kind of see what happened with the shutdown. If there's any impact on the highway, aviation, or transit program, we can give an update by the 29th. Don't know what'll change, but I do know the farther this gets in, the more the impact will have, and we just want to keep track of that and make sure the board's aware of it. We've asked to include a discussion on kind of the process we use for call to the audience, kind of overview that, talk to the board on that process a little bit. And then the last item was kind of just a quick overview from the department on with the Renaissance Festival coming up. And I know that was a big issue in past years. Mr. Stratton, we will go ahead and kind of update on how we're strategist approaching now that the Renaissance Festival is getting ready to start. So I figured those would be our study topics. We'll fill up the two plus hours with that. The highlight obviously being the tentative program. And then finally, the next board meeting is Friday, February 15th, and we are going to the city of Douglas. So just to remind the board members on that, we'll obviously be planning the activities and coordinating the lodging and other events. You'll hear from Ms. Priano on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from any other board members? Do I have a motion to?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
You have a second.
The meeting is adjourned.